Welcome, Good Grief Believer community. This podcast is for those who have experienced loss and grief, and for those who are hoping to support someone who is grieving. I'm your host, Julie Craig. I started this podcast in January of 2024, and I took a break for a short time at the end of the year to spend time with my family. But now I'm back. We have some really thoughtful interviews ahead with wonderful people who will share the different ways they've coped with profound loss and grief. Not all losses are the result of death, and we will have some guests this year who will speak to a variety of other circumstances besides the physical death of a loved one. This year is kind of exciting. There is a new host that will conduct some of the interviews this year. A previous guest of mine, Chris Frazier, is a certified bereavement doula, and she and her business partner, Dari Blake, who is also a bereavement doula and a previous guest on the podcast, have teamed up with me to try and expand our influence in helping people to better navigate difficult experiences associated with grief and loss. Chris will be hosting some of the interviews in 2025, and I'm excited to hear what she has to offer, and excited for those who will have a chance to speak with her about her experiences. Chris and Dari founded Ray of Hope Birth and Bereavement Doula Services in Spokane, Washington, and they can be found on Facebook and Instagram and will soon be featured on the Good Grief Believer website, which can be found at goodgriefbeliever.com. And it is spelled just as it sounds, GOODGRIEFBELIEVER.com. I encourage you to visit our website and see the different resources that we have found were helpful, and see if there's something positive that you can find there. I'd really like to thank all of you who've reached out to me in person, by email, or on social media to let me know that this podcast has been helpful to you. Thank you for sharing it with your friends and family who are newly grieving. It is always my hope that you who grieve will know you are not alone. You will not always feel as badly as you do now, and there really are ways to grieve productively and well. I want to share one suggestion that I found helpful to me to navigate the particular holiday called Valentine's Day. Here in the US, February 14th is a day for lovers to express their love by giving gifts, usually flowers or chocolates, or cards. In school, children will often exchange cards and candy with one another as well. Now, whether you are used to simple or elaborate celebrations, most people in a meaningful romantic relationship expect at the least a thoughtful card or kind gesture on Valentine's Day. For widows and widowers, Valentine's Day can be an especially painful reminder that we are alone. My late husband, Steve, did not express his most intimate feelings very prolifically. He preferred to demonstrate his love for me by his actions. And I always knew I was loved by him. But I really looked forward to Valentine's Day because I knew that on Valentine's Day, Steve would express his appreciation for me on that day with a written message. He would find a thoughtful card that would express what he thought, and I really treasured these words from him. After Steve passed away, I was anticipating the upcoming Valentine's Day holiday, and I had an idea, and this ended up being such a positive experience. I wanted to share it with others. By this time, I had been widowed for several months, almost a year, well, close to a year. And so I had gotten to know some other widows and widowers. And what I decided to do is I invited my friends who were widowed to come to my house for a Valentine's dinner. And I asked them to bring with them a picture of them with their spouse when they were young, either a wedding photo or something from that time period, and then another photo that represented kind of their relationship before they lost each other, or a favorite picture, something that felt very iconic to this is who we were. And we brought those photos and displayed them on my piano. And then we had a dinner together. We laughed and joked, but what we did was after dinner we went around and shared with each other how we met. So each person had a chance to share the story of how they met their spouse, how they fell in love, what they loved about them. And it was such a fun night. Rather than feeling lonely and sad and aware that others were being loved or, having more traditional experiences, we really enjoyed hearing from each other about the amazing relationships that we'd been privileged to be a part of. And it was a really, really wonderful experience. So I would encourage you this year, if you are grieving the loss of a spouse, maybe invite another friend over who's also grieving a loss, and share with each other the way my friends and I shared with each other the great privilege and blessing that it was to be a part of each other's lives, the things you loved about them, the way you grew and changed as a person because of your relationship to them. I know it made a huge difference for me, and I think it can make a difference for you. And if you're not grieving the loss of a spouse, but you happen to know someone who is, why not have a special Valentine's Day with that person? Invite them over. Ask them to show you a picture. Ask them to tell you about how they met, how they fell in love, what they loved about the person. It'll make somebody's day so much brighter. I also wanted to thank my friends and my family. There were several people who reached out to me that first Valentine's Day after Steve passed away. They sent flowers and chocolate and cards and kind messages. And I felt very loved, even as I missed my husband. That's my message for today. And I look forward to some really interesting interviews coming up. I always seem to be running into people who have found ways to manage profound grief and loss. And I encourage them to share with me what they've discovered has helped them to grieve well. If you or someone you know has found ways to grieve well, and by grieving well, I really mean maintaining hope, not becoming bitter, finding ways to continue to share light and with others and participate in the world around you. These are indicators, I believe, of grieving well. being able to continue to live well. If you or someone you know has a story like that and you would like to share, I'm always, always happy to speak to anyone about their experiences with grief and loss. And you can do that by reaching out to me at goodgriefbeliever@gmail.com. As an extra tidbit, I'm including the link for my own love story with Steve. It was featured in the Spokesman Review in 2016. And there was a reporter who had started doing an interest column in people's love stories. And so she came to our home and interviewed us. And I thought I would share that with you so that you could get a little feel for the person that I love that has passed away and how sweet it was to be able to share a little bit of our story with others.